the ingredients. All right, so the first thing is dark brown sugar. It doesn't matter if it's dark brown or regular brown, but there are two different kinds, so that's why I've left it in there, but dark brown sugar or just brown sugar. So mine is in front of me. You'll need some butter and you'll need some bananas. Great. Excellent. And you can see that my bananas are extremely unattractive, and that is perfect. Perfect. Then you'll need some more butter. So I've got 250 grams here for the whole cake, and we'll use all of that in the recipe. You'll need some more dark brown sugar. You'll need some vanilla extract. Now, it doesn't matter if you've got extract, essence, paste, whatever, any of those ingredients will work. Great. You'll need some eggs. Just got my eggs there. You'll need 2 extra bananas. So altogether, you'll need 5 bananas. 5 bananas. But if you've got really big bananas, then you probably will only need 3 or 4 of those. Great. And I'm going to show you when you make it again how you can be a little bit creative so you can use less bananas. You'll need some plain flour. You'll need some baking powder. So I've got the Aldi, the Aldi one. Baking powder. You'll need some ground ginger. And the cream is just if you want to have it. You don't have to have that. Great. Then in terms of the equipment, you're going to need some measuring spoons and measuring spoons and measuring cups. Great. The recipe says a deep round, like a 20 centimetre round cake tin. It actually doesn't matter. I'm just going to use my loaf tin just because I use it all the time, and yeah. So it doesn't matter. What we're really saying is that it's not a massive cake. So you don't want sort of like a really big, wide dish. It's like a medium-sized cake. Where are we? You need some baking paper. You'll need a small saucepan. You'll need a ladle or a deep spoon. You'll need a stand mixer or even just a little hand mixer. I've just got my trusty, really cheap and nasty one. It's fine and dandy for what we're doing today. One thing that's not on there is that you will need a spatula and a strong metal spoon, just like a spoon out of the drawer that you eat with. I just find they're the best things, super simple, best things. Great. Spatula and a spoon. Beautiful. All right. Fantastic. Let me remove my face. Always find that funny. Great. And now you can see everything overhead. Excellent. All right then. So before we start our recipe, we always do the prep work first. So the recipe says preheat your oven to 190 degrees. If you've got a fan forced oven, 170. 170. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to grease and line our dish. Excellent. So the first thing that we're going to do is spray. I'm using spray. If you don't use spray, you can just use some melted butter or just simply just some vegetable oil and paint just using a brush and just painting the outside of or the inside of your cake tin. So you don't have to overly do it because really what we're doing is we're using the spray to help our baking paper stick to the pan. Brilliant. All right, excellent. I'm going to show you how to do the loaf tin, and I try to make it super, super simple. So I've got a sheet of baking paper here. I'm just going to push. So I'm pushing my baking paper into the pan, and you can see that I can see all the 4 corners now. So I've got a corner there, corner there, corner there. You can tear it if you want to, or you can use a pair of scissors just to cut into the corner from the edge of the paper into the corner. Right. And I love that everyone's used different pans, because that's like everyone's been nice and creative. So I feel like this is, I always call it the stingray. It looks like a stingray. So you can see that I've cut down those 4 pieces there. And then I'm just going to fold the paper so that you get a nice smooth side. If you want to cut more, if your paper sort of bunches up a bit, you can cut any extra paper off. So I'll just take that a little closer to the camera just so you can see that. Excellent. And then once you've done your baking dish, just put it to the side because you won't need that for a while. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make our caramelized banana topping. All right. Right, so to do this, you're going to need a little saucepan. Grab yourself a little saucepan, and we're going to add our ingredients directly to this saucepan. So the first thing that you will need is 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. 3/4 of a cup. And we're going to add it straight to our saucepan. It makes it just a little bit easier for me to pour my brown sugar in. And because we're using brown sugar, we need to press down on the brown sugar to get an accurate measure. So this is called firmly packed, which you would have probably seen in a recipe before, firmly packed. You'll get sugar all over your hands, or you could use just the back of a spoon. So make sure that you definitely press down. Now, as I use my ingredient, because I'm using my my bag of brown sugar, I'm putting it back into a freezer bag. Make sure that you seal things up or close lids as you go along, because that just makes it a little bit easier at the end. I've got sugar all over me. Okay, it's 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar and 100 grams of unsalted butter, chopped. So if you've got a block of butter like this, turn it to the side of the butter where there are little, it might be 50-gram notches, 100-gram notches, depending on the brand of butter. Got mine upside down. So because we're going to use this whole block of butter in our cake, I'm just from the outside just going to make a little mark at the 100-gram point. So I'm using Western Star butter, and I've got 50, 100, 150, 200, 250. So if I mark from the outside, then when I open up my butter, I can see that mark already, and that just makes it super easy for me to just use my knife nice and carefully. And I'm going to just chop it up into a few different pieces, not too much, but just so that there's more surface area, and that means that the butter will melt quicker. Don't put the butter back in the fridge because we want the cake part, we want the butter to be soft, and it's gorgeously warm at the moment, so excellent. Now, we're not doing anything with our bananas quite yet. What we are going to do is start melting our sugar and butter. So the recipe says, combine the butter and the sugar in a small saucepan over medium heat. Cook, stirring for 5 minutes or until the sugar is dissolved and is starting to thicken and caramelize. So you'll find that, like, if you don't want burnt butter, nobody wants burnt butter. So what we're going to do is over a medium heat, and if you feel like it's starting to, you'll be able to smell it. You just want it at a nice, so it's bubbling away, and then some of the liquid will start to evaporate off, and you'll be left with a nice sort of syrupy bottom. So you can always come back and look at what I'm doing. Medium heat. Really kind of thick, and yeah, so it's the So you'll see that the steam stops. Like, it's like the liquid has evaporated off, and now it's syrupy. Beautiful. Still sort of bubbling a little bit, but I'm going to pour my syrup straight into the bottom of my pan. Beautiful. Remember, the pan is super, super hot. So I've poured my syrup into the bottom of my pan. Already poured their syrup in. Then you can start cutting up your bananas, and you can be as creative as you want. So you can see the recipe has got a picture of bananas just chopped, you know, in discs. I think that's what we call them, discs. You can do it that way, where you just chop them like that and just line them up. Remember, when you put your bananas in, be very careful because your syrup is super hot. If you want to use a fork or even some tongs to do that, you could do that. Just be really careful that you don't burn yourself. Again, you can be as creative as you want. If you want to do long strips, you can do long strips or strips of the banana. I'm going to do that. Just do what feels right for you. There is no wrong way. I'm just being super careful. Like, my syrup has already gone a bit solid. I always find that a metal fork is so much better for me than using a masher. I don't know, I just don't like using a masher, like a potato masher for bananas. But if that floats your boat and that works, then awesome. No wrong way. Great, love it. All right, fabulous. Once you've mashed your banana, just pop it to the side. All right, and then we're going to start on our cake recipe. All right, so at this stage, we've got our pan with our syrup part. We've got our bananas mashed, and then we're going to start making our banana cake. So the next thing, we're at step 7 on the recipe. And remember that I love when you guys take notes. So if you've got your recipe printed out, feel free to write notes on it to make it more your own. Excellent. Or if there's anything that you've learned. Okay, so we're going to add, we've got our butter that we had left over, 125 grams. Before you add it to the bowl, we want to break it up a bit. So I'm just going to slice up my butter. And the reason we do this is just to make it a little bit easier for the beaters, so we don't overwork the beaters. So I've kind of got them in small cubes. Oh, great. And then just add it to the bowl once you've cubed it up. And if you've got your butter wrap, just pop that straight into the bin. So we've got 125 grams of unsalted butter. And then we're going to add another 3/4 of a cup of firmly packed brown sugar to the mix. So exactly what we did before. Firmly packing. So it's 3/4 of a cup of dark brown sugar, or just brown sugar is fine. And we want brown sugar because it's much more caramelly, and caramel and bananas go beautifully together.
How much sugar?
Oh, sorry. 3/4 of a cup. 3/4 of a cup. Remember, firmly pack. So use your fingers or the back of a spoon to pack down to make sure that you get the right measurement. So you definitely want 3/4 of a cup. Just add that straight to your bowl. So we've got 125 grams of unsalted butter, 3/4 of a cup of firmly packed brown sugar, and then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract or essence, either one. 2 teaspoons. And you'll see that I measure over at the side of the bowl. I don't measure over the bowl just in case I accidentally spill it. And I do that.
So what is that?
Okay. It's vanilla essence, vanilla extract. All right, we want to start with our beaters in the bowl. Not do what I just did. And hanging onto the bowl with our other hand. Start slow. Then we're going to add 2 eggs, but one at a time. So add 1 egg. And then beat it. So once you've added your first egg and then mixed it all in, then add your second egg. So you got 2 eggs, mixing it for 1 more minute. Great. Then you're scraping down the sides. And at this point, we're at step 10 of the recipe. And then you can add your banana. So it will slide right in. Then you can either just mix that in with your spatula, or if you want to use a low speed on your beaters, you can use just a low speed to mix that in. And then we're going to add 1 1/4 cups of plain flour, 1 1/4 cups. So we've got 1 1/4 of a cup. So you can see again, I'm just adding at the side, not over the top. This is certainly something I don't want a mistake on. Okay, 1. One 1/4 cups of flour. And then we've got 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder. 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder. And what this does, it converts our flour from plain flour to self-raising flour, depending on your packaging. 1 teaspoon and then 1/2 teaspoon. And I sprinkle because sometimes baking powder has a little bit of a lumps sometimes. One teaspoon and then 1/2 teaspoon. All right, so we've added our plain flour, we've added our baking powder, and then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of ginger. 2 teaspoons of ginger. You could use cinnamon if you don't have ginger for a slightly different flavour. Two teaspoons. Two teaspoons of ginger, ground ginger. And then just using your spatula, we're going to fold the mixture. So folding is not beating. We're just like an envelope, folding it until all of the mixture combines. Great. And then as soon as you've done that, you can then pour it on top of your bananas. So remember, we're just folding our mixture. Now, you might need someone's help to, if one person holds the bowl and the other person scoops it into your loaf pan or whatever pan you're using. Or if you want to just do it by using a big spoon. It's always a little bit tricky getting it in. And using the sides of your spatula, just those edge bits there, and scraping around your bowl. Spatulaing, using a spatula is a bit of a skill. Once you've got it, it's like riding a bike. You want to get as much of that mixture out of your bowl. Now, some people will want to eat the batter, but remember there is raw egg in there. So for me, raw egg, you won't want to eat raw egg. Every family has their own perspective on it. Right. So what we're going to do now, we're at step 13 on the recipe. It says bake for 50 minutes or until a skewer inserted in the middle of the cake comes out nice and clean. You will need someone to help you do that, to check. Sometimes I just use a nice sharp knife and I insert it into the middle, but a skewer leaves less indentation. And then the recipe says stand for 10 minutes and then you can turn it onto a plate. But you will need help for that again. I don't want you doing that on your own. You'll need to put a plate over the top. When you're finished, I'm just going to show you what you can do. And then turn it over. And then the syrup will come out. So when you turn it over, you will need a plate with sides because the syrup will run out all over the plate. So make sure that you use either a really big bowl or a big serving bowl that has some high sides so that beautiful syrup has somewhere to run. You don't want to serve it on like just a board. Great. Fantastic. All right. You are ready to go. Now, of course, it's now pack down, pack away your ingredients, wipe down everything and wash up.